and currently have videos in 25 states and even a few international. Let's face it, nobody wants to read anymore. As a matter of fact, nobody wants to even watch long videos, which is why I'm going to keep this real quick. Moving into the future, how are we going to educate the public on all the historic treasures that are found in every community? We have found the answer. Short, entertaining, and to-the-point videos with lots of shots and views that are relevant to the subject. These videos are shared on social media and are the fastest and least expensive way to educate the community on the history of your area. We have experience working with historical organizations as well as city or county tourism departments and Chamber of Commerce's to produce these videos for their use. Our clients are provided with copies of any video produced as well as online links to the videos that they can easily add to their websites. Let us document and produce videos of just a few or all the historic sites in your area. You will find our rates extremely affordable and well below the industry standard for media production. We are passionate about preserving and documenting as many historical sites as we can, and we would love to work with you. For more information, contact me directly at russ@familytreenuts.org or my personal phone at 859-314-1976. And remember, Family Tree Nuts, let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree. We're live.
Hey.
We are live. What's up, Jameson?
Are we live? I was ready for the guitar intro, man. The
Yeah,
music.
man. History Nuts, our video together. That was the wrong daggone video. So let's get this straight. Jordan normally produces the show, right? And now Jordan's boss is producing the show tonight, and he grouped it up, didn't he?
When the boss comes in, man.
I guess that was a good video, but it wasn't your and I's video, right? So
I know it gets me pumped up, man.
yeah. So we are talking about tonight the history of Louisville.
Louisville. Yeah. Louisville. No. Louisville.
Louisville. Louisville. Louisville.
You get that? Louisville.
Louisville.
Yeah.
So everybody in the United States pronounces it about 17 different ways. I've seen it on T-shirts, coffee cups, all the different spellings. Here in Kentucky, we say
Louisville.
Louisville. Louisville. L-U-L-V-U-L. Louisville.
Now.
Louisville. And you got to put some marbles in your mouth when you say that.
Yeah, you got to get the tongue. The tongue's got to be in there.
Louisville. I got to. Everybody practice that at home. Louisville. Those people that are not from there. So, but, yeah, I'm really excited about this show because there's so much stuff about Louisville, isn't there?
There is, and just to clarify, you should always pronounce a place by how the locals pronounce it, even if it isn't spelled correctly or pronounced correctly.
I understand. I think Kentucky has a few other places that they pronounce, let's just say differently.
Okay, differently. Differently sounds good. Yeah.
What's that little town called just west of Lexington, Versailles? I guess.
Versailles. Oh yeah, no. Versailles, man. There's sales on that.
Versailles. Whenever I have to put in my GPS, I put an address in there. I speak it. I have to say Versailles in order for my GPS to find it. What about that little? You know about that little community just south of Lexington? Starts with an A. Capital of Greece.
Oh, Athens.
Yeah, we don't call it Athens here, though. We call it
Athens, right?
Athens. That's Athens down there, right? So, but yeah, we're full of that. But that's not the show at all today, is it?
No. This is not a linguistic pronunciation show.
That's right. But we want people to know that we have folks that watch from all over the country. It is pronounced
Louisville.
So we will, for the rest of the show, we'll say Louisville. So you know what we're saying.
Yeah. Well, and it's a good topic though. Like we've talked a lot. I said this before. We talked about Central, or I guess I should say, should I say Main Central? Boonesboro, Fort
Bluegrass
Harris.
region.
Yeah. Fort Logan. We've talked about that region a lot, but the big city of Louisville is up there. It's also kind of being settled, populated, and growing as well. And we're going to talk about that today. So
I have a question for you, Jameson, because you are a
Mhm.
Kentucky native, and a lot of people
Mhm.
may or may not know this, but I'm not a Kentucky native. I'm from just a little bit north of there, across the river. But is Louisville Kentucky, or is it?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Are you sure? Because a lot
I'm
of people
sure.
in Kentucky, man, that ain't Kentucky, man, that ain't Kentucky. That's Indiana. That's the Midwest up there, buddy.
I I speak for myself, I guess, but Louisville is Kentucky. I claim Louisville 100%. Now, some people, I guess, they may not, but
Well, I think the reason they say that is because of kind of the Louisville has a, well, it's kind of like the face of the entire Kentucky. Is it the North or is it the South? Is it
Mhm.
Midwest? Is it what is Kentucky? If you go to Mississippi, they'll tell you that Kentucky is definitely not the South. If you go to
Yeah.
Ohio, they're going to tell you that Kentucky is definitely not the North. Kind of
Yeah.
thing. Louisville is a nice snapshot of that because even the people in Kentucky say, "Hey, that Louisville, that's Indiana, man. That's the Midwest." Kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
More of a,
I claim I
a
claim
little less
Louisville.
Southern
Yeah.
hospitality, but definitely full of Southern hospitality. And in its history, it's definitely a Southern city.
A lot of rich history. I mean, and we're going to talk about that a lot today. I mean, it's been there for a long time, and it grew. It kind of had a back set, it grew some more. I mean, it's the most populated city in Kentucky. Obviously, there's a huge population. You talk about Jefferson County, or being the Louisville Jefferson metro area and all that stuff. Which we won't get too much into that, but it's part of Kentucky, man. It's on the other.
And as far as sports rivalries go and stuff, are we froze?
Whoa.
Everybody in Kentucky loves Louisville, the University of Louisville sports, don't they?
Well, hold on. Now we're talking about geographic area, not not basketball.
Everybody in
Or football.
Kentucky, we love Kentucky sports, UK sports, and we love University of Louisville sports, right?
No.
No,
I draw the line there.
Kentucky fans hate some Louisville, and vice versa. But that's not the show. I just wanted. I'm bringing all this up because Louisville's history is Kentucky history, and it is deep enriched in Kentucky history right from the get-go. But it is definitely a place. As a fella that grew up not in Kentucky, it was surprising to me that how much people throughout the state thought Louisville was an island kind of thing. It's not part of Kentucky to a lot of people, but I'll claim it. I like Louisville. So
yeah.
But
hey, well, real quickly too, we already got some people commenting and chiming in. Let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channels, the YouTube channels, Family Tree Nuts and Kentucky History Channel. But Michael Bush says hello. Carol says hello. Michael also says that I'm right, that we're UK all the way. Let's see. Ancestral Stalker says, being from Illinois and trying to find stories from area where my ancestors were. Summer Shade, Metcalf, Kentucky, and Greenup. So Greenup, Kentucky. Well, that's a little to the northeast, Greenup County.
yeah.
So, and then yeah, so that's some comments as far. So let us know where you're from and where you're watching. But let's get into Louisville, man.
Yeah, I saw that somebody said Russ is a Ferner. It said Ferner. Is what it said. Man, I got dual citizenship. I've actually lived in Kentucky longer than I've lived in OHIO, but with a little bit of time all over the world in the middle of that. But yeah, Louisville history. The area was actually made up of 6 different settlements in the area there. It grew up different towns and things like that. And the whole reason why Louisville is where it is because of
the river, right?
And
the falls.
The falls of the Ohio. Have you ever visited the falls of the Ohio, Jameson?
No, I have not.
Is it kind of like Niagara Falls?
I don't think it's that. Like,
No, it's just some rapids, in there. It's some rapids that you have to navigate in order to get there. It is less of a navigational hazard today than it was in the past and things. But it was a place where if you're traveling downriver, you needed to probably offload your supplies off of your keel boats or your boats onto a dock, carry the supplies down by horseback, run your boat down the falls a little bit, and then reload. So it was a very strategic spot as far as that goes. And it sits pretty much geographically right in the middle from where the Monongahela and the Allegheny River come together in modern day.
Pretty important point. I mean,
Pittsburgh, at the foundation of Ohio, and where it empties into the Mississippi River. So it's pretty much right smack dab in the middle of the Ohio.
And you talk about like settlements and stuff, and you think, I mean, this was legit. Louisville was legit made because of its geographical location. I mean, it just people would go down the river and they couldn't cross the rapids or the falls, and so they'd have to get off, and it just naturally would become a settlement, a big settlement. So,
but was there a Native American camp there at the time?
Well, I mean, I'm sure throughout time, yes. So what are you talking about, a specific time here?
Yeah. It's such a strategic spot to European Americans, but it wasn't really a strategic spot to the indigenous people, the natives that were there. There has been native activities there since about 1000 BC. We said we're going to talk. I forgot to mention Louisville history. So this show is going to be about 17 hours and 47 minutes. We're going to do. But so go ahead and get some popcorn and get your coffee.
We've not even got into an actual year yet. We've
we've been on here. No, but seriously, we are trying to do a very, very, very short snapshot, cliff notes of the history of Louisville, not of a certain decade kind of thing, because it would take us all year to do shows. Really, the history of Louisville wouldn't. But people have lived in the area since about 1000 BC. Or BCE if you're an atheist, I guess, but like Jameson, right? So
whoa.
No, just kidding, brother. I know you're far from that, but that would be a funny joke, man. But until about the mid 1600s, and the mid 1600s was when they had the Beaver Wars, and that's an entirely different show. I could go in details if you'd like, but we can move on forward from that. But when was the first European settlement?
1751. Christopher Gist, right? Is that who came into the area?
Yeah, I worded that wrong. When was the first time? Well, I mean, there's a whole discrepancy whether LaSalle, the French explorer LaSalle, actually came there. He didn't come there. A whole nother show kind of thing. But the first Anglo, yes, Christopher Gist in 1751 explored all down the Ohio River region.
There you go. Now, real quickly, Don Smith says, born in Kentucky, but not in Kentucky sports fan, but watching from Ironton, Ohio.
Martin. That's Arnton.
Martin?
Arnton, Ohio. It's not Ironton.
Oh, Arnton. Oh,
Arnton.
There you go. Well, there you go. That's a good pronouncement. Carol said Logan, Ohio. Lola Taylor Irvin listening from Middle Tennessee history in Southeast Kentucky, Bell County. And Vanessa Hall is watching from Norwalk, Ohio. I'm not sure. Oh, Irish Reb, Creek area. And Ancestor Stalker says, was it one of the first settlements? And I don't know if he's talking about the first settlements in Kentucky. If that was the case, no, it was probably I don't know. What would you say? Like I'm just saying the number. Like if you had Boonesboro, you have Fort Harrod, Boonesboro, Fort Logan. I mean, I don't know.
Roaring Springs,
Yeah, I mean, it's
Lexington,
maybe probably in the top
Rutland.
10, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, probably
But
about top 10. And we're getting ready
yeah,
to get
and
to
if
that
we're
point.
if we're talking about like when, which we'll get to this in a minute, George Rogers Clark set up camp and all that stuff. But anyway. So anyway, go ahead. Where
Well,
we at?
in 1769 to 1770, 1771-ish, Daniel Boone is exploring the area. Many say that Boone did travel. I mean, he was gone for 2 years, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Out on his trips and things like that, in the nude, actually. Many times has been documented that he was tracing through Kentucky.
Well,
You didn't know Daniel Boone was a nude, did you?
He peed on every tree in Kentucky, I bet.
Yes, that would take some time, but 1773, Thomas Bullitt, who Bullitt County, you've heard of Bullitt County, Kentucky, was exploring the area for the governor of Virginia, and 1773. This is relevant because when we think of the history of Kentucky, we think of Fort Harrod, we think of Boonesboro, Fort Logan, all this kind of stuff. This is before that. 1773 is the same time that Boone was trying to make the first settlement here in Kentucky. But Thomas Bullitt was sent by the governor of Virginia, Lord Dunmore, to explore the area and look for places to give land grants to French and Indian War veterans. So kind of the same thing that James Harrod was sent to do in the Bluegrass region, isn't it?
Yeah. So did Thomas Bullitt name anything or like that? Or did he make a claim to anything?
Well, I know that he explored the area, kind of thing. He was, and that's a whole nother show there. Who is Thomas Bullitt? Man, Thomas Bullitt is a really cool guy of his activity in the French and Indian War himself. He didn't live much longer after his explorations into Kentucky, but another show, man. I really try to stay focused with this. Man, we can go
our best
on this as far as the history of Louisville.
Yeah. So let's skip who is the first settlement. Let's get to that point. Who is the first settlement?
The first settlement happened in 1778 by one of my personal heroes and a man that is tremendously forgotten in American history, the conqueror of the Old Northwest, the George Washington of the West, General George Rogers Clark. Set up a base right there on what's called Corn Island, which was out in the middle of the Ohio River and right there at the falls of the Ohio in 1778. Now,
okay, I won't interject here. You say Corn Island. I believe, if what I read this, it's been a while, but that old Thomas Bullitt originally named Corn Island Dunmore Island.
How about that?
Yeah, but anyway, Corn Island, that's a weird name. Why would they name it Corn Island?
Well,
did it have a lot of corn on it?
He would have called it Dunmore Island because Lord Dunmore was the governor of Virginia at the time, and you always kind of kiss the behind of the boss man, right? So that's what I think that they did all the time. But
we'll get to some more behind kissing here in a minute. But
absolutely,
why Corn Island? Why was it named Corn Island?
Well, because it was a ruse, Make a very, very, very long story short. And you and I have done other videos about George Rogers Clark, but Kentucky basically continued to getting attacked by Native Americans that were supported by the British, Western Front of the Revolutionary War. George Rogers Clark petitioned the Virginia governor, Patrick Henry, hey, let me go fight these people at the source. So he organizes the Illinois Regiment to go and attack the Native Americans at their own places. He went to Kaskaskia, Cahokia, and eventually conquered Vincennes, which is a awesome story in and of its own. But he set up Corn Island. He started out at the modern-day Pittsburgh area, and he recruited about 80 civilian settlers to plant corn on Corn Island. they used it as a ruse. It was
Hmm.
they didn't have the modern day caminet to cover up their storage operations there at their base. They made it look like it was a settlement camp of settlers that were settling right there in the middle of the Falls of the Ohio.
Hmm. Not because they were planting corn. It was a ruse.
Well, they planted corn there, but they also wanted a supply depot there or a
Hmm.
communication point there, between the old Boone Trace and, the old
Hmm.
route of communication there
Yeah.
for Clark's invasion areas. And that's the funny thing about it. And I'm going to backtrack a second. This is 1778, but there's been white people around in the area that they don't speak English, though. They speak French deep
Yeah.
into the 1600s, living in these areas.
That is pretty wild. People don't realize that. So Clark goes off to battle, but does he take all the people with him?
Well, he leaves the civilians behind there to maintain the fort there, and that's a whole other story of itself. He is extremely victorious.
Hmm.
Defeats Colonel Hamilton, the hair buyer, the despised British colonel there, and sends him back to your neck of the woods there in Fort Logan for a time, doesn't he?
Yep. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So what
We're getting off
developed?
track,
So
man. Getting off track. We know too much about history. We're getting off track about the history of Louisville, right? Kind of
yeah.
thing.
So
This is
what develops though after so people stay back at Corn Island. Did they just stay on the island and then fill in
well.
around?
Shortly thereafter, they made a fort that was on shore on the Kentucky side, and they named it a pretty creative name, didn't they, on the fort that they did?
Fort. Oh yeah, the fort on shore.
Yeah, Fort on Shore. That was pretty creative, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. That took some thinking.
We got a fort on the shore. We just call it Fort on Shore. But at Fort on Shore, that is actually today you can find that. It's at the dead end of 12th Street. If you've never been there, it's an industrial area. There is an historic marker there, but that is where the fort, and you can actually look across and see, the Falls of the Ohio. You can see George Rogers Clark's home over there on Indiana side there, but that's where they put the fort. But that fort didn't last too very long before they made another one, didn't they?
Yep. Comes in Fort Nelson.
Fort Nelson.
Right. And,
absolutely.
So they're growing. The place is growing. I mean, I don't expect you to possibly know this question, but how many forts ended up in the area, do you think?
That I know of, just the two. But Fort Nelson was at kind of the middle, a little bit north of Main Street there in Louisville, between 7th and 8th Streets. It's kind of where the Louisville Science Center is. It's right just a little bit east of the Fraser Museum there, really close to the Louisville Slugger Hall, museum there. But if you go to those areas, it's, people like me and you, Jameson, we go to these areas and we see these big cities, we see stoplights, we see trash all over the ground, but we also see a fort that was there. And
well, I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for those historical markers driving around. It's probably not a safe way to drive, but I'll be going down 150 and there's a historical marker there, and I'm itching to drive over and just read them, but it's probably not safe driving. But when they pop up,
that's a fact. That's a fact. So, so you got the forts there, and then kind of the reason why we're doing this story right now is because on May the 1st, 1780, 241 years ago and 11 days ago, I guess, Louisville becomes chartered.
There you go. Becomes a town. They name it. Who do they name it after?
King Louis the 16th of France. Now, you got Louisiana, you got St. Louis, you got Louisville, all this stuff, Bourbon
Yeah.
County, you get all this stuff popping up over these French names.
Uh-huh.
Why?
Why? Whose butt are they kissing?
Hey, what the King of France, who at the time was very instrumental in helping the American cause, kind of thing.
American Revolution is raging. So why not name everything after the French guy who's helping out?
Absolutely. Hey, you name me that something after me, I might give you a little more money, a little more men and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I assume, the city's kind of getting named. People are going to start moving in. A lot of people how many people start to kind of flock to Louisville?
Not very many. Not
Huh.
very many in the beginning. Now, Louisville, we know, is by far the biggest city in Kentucky, but in the beginning, it didn't start off that way. Why not?
I would say maybe well, I don't know. I was going to say location, but the location would seem to be pretty accurate.
Great
But
spot.
it is kind of farther away, like we were saying before, from the first early settlements. So I don't know. What's your thought?
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that Spain, not France,
Mm,
Spain controlled the Mississippi,
Mississippi.
and they
Yep.
they controlled what we call today the Louisiana Purchase, and would not allow American traffic on the river to go past, say, Vicksburg or something like that. So,
hmm
most of the settlements was further east from Louisville, so it was harder to ship goods upriver than downriver. But
hmm
it just wasn't this special place. Now we know in 1799.
Uh-oh.
Uh, a leader in Spanish Missouri. Missouri, what the heck? Well, about a year or two later, that gets ceded to the French, and the French are in control of that. And then in 1803, they sell that area to the United States.
There you go. Free travel. Ready to open her up.
So that's the biggest reason why it didn't explode right off the bat. I think in 1800, I think
Mhm.
Louisville had 383 people or so, but Lexington had over 1,700 people, six
Wow.
times
Yeah.
larger.
Yeah, which I
So,
guess that makes sense. If there's no way to travel, I guess west of Louisville, why go to Louisville when everything else is kind of on the east side? So
right, just didn't
makes
take off
sense.
right off the bat, didn't it?
Nope,
But
nope. So in this early city of Louisville, they have a fire department, right?
yeah, and they founded the fire department in the first year of existence. I thought that's pretty interesting, isn't it? In 1780, kind of thing. They got their priorities straight. Let's go ahead and make a fire department right off the bat.
I can understand. Um, so yeah, uh, 1783. Getting into what starts popping up.
Well, people started to move outside the fort, and these are things that it's really interesting to think about because this is about the time that Abraham Lincoln's grandfather, Abraham Lincoln, moved to about that area.
hmm
This area was constantly getting bombarded by Native American attacks. We think about Native American attacks here in central Kentucky, but it was really getting bombarded right on the
hmm
river, right across from important Shawnee villages and things like that. And it was constantly getting invaded but until the Revolutionary War ended, then in 1783, people started to feel a little bit, um,
Safer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So in 1783, I guess Daniel Broadhead set up his first general store outside of the fort. Before that, everybody's living in the fort, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, that is kind of a long time. You think 3 years, everybody is kind of staying in the fort more than outside. Which I mean, it was probably a bit more violent and risky. So It's understandable. Yeah, so they start expanding, which would be a natural thing once it's more safe. They start expanding. Then what's built next? What comes after the first? They get outside the fort. What do they got to put?
Jonathan Cessna, built his first house outside the fort. He's known as the first person, kind of like Nathaniel Hart is known as being the first house outside of Boonesboro. But I think you're getting into the 1784. The first courthouse is built.
Yeah, that courthouse, right?
Yeah, and it was a big mega building, wasn't it? They built stone and
16 times 20 log cabin. Is that what you mean by mega building?
16 by 20 log cabin. And that was the center of operations there in Louisville, kind of thing. And that's pretty amazing to think about. And if you've been to, Danville, you see the first state courthouse there too. So in Kentucky.
Yeah. So at this point, Louisville, what would you say, house-wise? How many houses?
Well, right then at 17, it grew quick right there in the beginning. I think there at this point, 1784, they had 63 finished houses, 37 partially finished houses, and about over 100 log cabins. And which is basically ends up being about a couple hundred families that are living there in 1784.
I wonder, have you ever seen one of those, population maps or videos where it shows like the population growing over time?
Absolutely.
I'd like to see one of those of Kentucky, just Kentucky.
Yeah.
But that'd be my own personal. Hey, you want to take a quick break here, and we got a good video about.
Well, I'm not there yet. I'm not ready for that video yet. But we're getting pretty close.
Okay, we're getting close. All right. We'll get there.
Yeah, we're getting really close to that. So, 1785, the next year, the town of Shippingport was incorporated. Now, Shippingport is actually on the islands there, and right there, it's very important for shipping goods up and down river right there, and it's its own town. And then in 1790, the first church was established.
There you go. Do we know? I assume. Do we know? You know what the church was, by chance?
I don't, but I find it interesting that 1790, the first church was founded.
10 years. That's a while not to have a. You would think there'd be a church a little sooner than that.
Yeah, I talked about a lot of different communities where the church is one of the first things that's established.
Put it before the courthouse, at least.
This is, as a genealogist, I read in between the lines all the time to get the real story. This is a great microcosm of what the heck the community was like back then. This is a rowdy bunch of backwoodsmen, frontiersmen, people, entrepreneurs, people of hunter, trappers, people living out in the daggone backwoods, and they're just not worried about settling down, having a church right now, kind of thing.
Yeah, they're just worried about getting a leg up and getting up in the morning.
Yeah, so that tells you the type of community this is. The tavern was there long before the church.
Yeah. So let's see. So church, tavern, post office. What's next?
Church, post office, 1795. In 1798, the Spanish trade regulations were lifted, and you were allowed to now ship your goods all the way downriver to the port of New Orleans. Basically, what we would call like NAFTA of today.
Yeah.
And 1798, that was Pinckney's Treaty that was signed. Most people don't know about Pinckney's Treaty. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I do not know about Pinckney.
Pinckney's Treaty is basically what established the lines of Spanish Florida and the United States. It was signed in Madrid, in Spain. But in that treaty, it allowed for American trade to go downriver. 1798. Remember, we said Boone came to the St. Louis area in 1799. A few years later, turns over to the French. A lot of people don't realize that all this stuff that's going on out in the back country and stuff of people that have settled there. But that ends up at that point in time when trade can go downriver instead of upriver. Louisville begins to have its boom there in the 1800s.
And boom, it does, right? Well, you said this already, but at this time, Lexington had about 1,700. Louisville had about 359.
Yep, and 1,800.
So big lopsided population when you think of it today.
Well, Louisville metro area is about double the size of the Lexington metro area. So
yeah,
and it's definitely a boom, and it's even had a little bit of a decline. But we'll talk about that here in a second. 1803, the Louisiana Purchase happens. The United States takes over this huge area of territory there, and President Jefferson hires these guys, Lewis and Clark.
They got to go explore.
They got to go explore, and they left and recruited their members, the 9 men of Kentucky. Right there from Louisville. And now we're finally ready for that quick break. So stay with us. Watch this video here. This is right across the river from Louisville, but it tells a big story that Louisville's a big part of. So I'll meet you guys on the other side. From right here is where their epic adventure began. Hey everybody, this is Russ from Family Tree Nuts, and I'm at the Falls of the Ohio State Park outside of Clarksville, Indiana, on the banks of the Ohio River, just across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm at the location of the retirement home of General George Rogers Clark. Many of us are familiar with the words Lewis and Clark. They're part of American culture and heritage, and right here is where their journey began. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson worked out a deal with France that became known as the Louisiana Purchase. President Jefferson appointed his aide, Meriwether Lewis, to lead an expedition to explore the new Louisiana Purchase and try to find a waterway to the Pacific Ocean. Meriwether Lewis asked his friend William Clark to help co-lead the adventure. William Clark was staying with his brother, General George Rogers Clark, when he received the letter from Meriwether Lewis requesting him to go on the adventure. While Lewis was back east making preparations for the journey, William Clark began to recruit men from Louisville and used his brother's house as a base camp. It surely didn't hurt recruitment that General George Rogers Clark was the conqueror of the Old Northwest, the Washington of the West, and the founder of Louisville. The men that William Clark recruited became known as the 9 young men from Kentucky. Their names were William Bratton, a blacksmith and a gunsmith. Later on the journey, Bratton came down with a terrible back injury, and he was cured by an Indian sweat bag. John Coulter, who later became the first white man to see the steam vents and boiling mud pits in the area that became Yellowstone National Park. The brothers Joseph Field and Reuben Field, who on the journey took part in the fight with the Blackfoot Indians. Charles Floyd, the quartermaster of the trip, and the only member to die while on the adventure. George Gibson, he played the fiddle on the journey and was used as an interpreter with the Native Americans using sign language. Nathaniel Pryor, who was a cousin of Charles Floyd and the first sergeant of the group. Later on the journey, he was asked to sit in on a court-martial of Privates John Collins and Hugh Hall. They were accused of stealing whiskey and drinking on duty, and they were sentenced to 100 lashes. Another was George Shannon, the youngest on the adventure. Once, he got separated from the group for 16 days and almost starved to death. And John Shields, the second oldest of the expedition. Later on, he spent some time hunting with Daniel Boone in Missouri. Also, an original member of the Corps of Discovery was a man named York. York was an enslaved man belonging to William Clark since childhood. He performed his duties like any other man on the journey, and he has several interesting stories from the adventure. The Corps of Discovery set off from here on October the 26th, 1803. Imagine their excitement. Now, I know I've just scratched the surface on the epic adventure that was the Lewis and Clark expedition, but I wanted to take you where they stepped off, right here, from the home of General George Rogers Clark. The names Lewis and Clark are forever ingrained into American culture, and here's where the adventure began. Family Tree Nuts, let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree. Like what you see? Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the little bell so you get notifications as to when we post new videos. And you can find out more about us and contact us at familytreenuts.org.